There are plenty of books and podcasts out there offering tips and tricks and hacks and shortcuts. And yeah, it's tempting. Is there some slick technique I can deploy to bend people to my will? There's some quick way that I can out-hustle my competitors or my detractors. Here's a critical point. When we talk about admired leader behaviors, the behaviors can be simple. Most of them can be explained in just a few minutes. But they are not tricks or hacks. And if you use them like that, they'll backfire.
The biggest problem we see with most of our clients is wanting more and more behaviors and asking for 5, 10, 15 of them, give me everything you have. The truth is they're going to falter completely if they try and walk in on Monday and do 6 new behaviors. Immediately they'll be labeled as working on a technique of some sort, that they went to some workshop and that's why they're doing that.
A technique is something that you do in order to get an effect. It's for a particular situation, and it's something that you can execute well or poorly, and you'll know whether it's done well or poorly based on whether or not you get what you want. The trouble with technique is, one, you have to know when to use it, but also when you use a technique and you don't do it artfully enough, other people can tell you're doing it.
Techniques can be perceived as tactics. People can smell your intentions a mile away, and they have a sense for whether you're using a real technique or you're using something that's more of a routine, that's more of part of who you are.
There's nothing less authentic than seeing someone ask for something in a particular way. You know exactly what they're trying to get out of you. So techniques can be effective sometimes, but if they're not well executed, they're going to backfire, and they also make you seem less genuine.
Techniques feel like they're being applied to you. Feels like it's being imposed. You have a technique for how you do feedback. It doesn't feel authentic. It just feels wrong. And people don't respond well to it because they think, you're just doing this because you learned this in a class. So techniques feel like they're being practiced.
So we make a very, very sharp and strong distinction between technique and routine. And we do it for a very important reason, because we think technique is the anathema, the curse of being effective. Let me explain why. So techniques are things that we do for effect. And techniques are hacks, they're tricks, they're tips. They're things that we do once in a while because we don't need those effects all the time. And that's why the very nature they're called techniques. And so we engage in those techniques at moments where that effect is important to us. Now, what happens when we do something we don't do very often is we don't become very skillful at it. We're certainly not masterful at it. We only do it once in a great while. Okay? And secondly, because it's not commonly what we do, the people that are experiencing that oftentimes have the same conclusion. You don't commonly do that, so therefore what is going on? And so you raise the antennae of people who are saying, are you trying to do something on purpose to have an effect? Which makes them want to resist whatever it is you're doing. In both cases, both in terms of the idea that techniques are only sometimes used, and then also the idea that people resist them, techniques are not very effective for being better.
Routines are different. They're things that you do on a habitual basis because you believe that they are the right thing to do. They may or may not generate an effect, elicit an effect in others. They may or may not be done in order to elicit an effect in some way, but that's not the primary motive for the behavior that you're undertaking in a routine. You do it because you believe it's the right thing to do, the best thing to do.
Right, so I don't use a technique in a particular situation to get you to agree with me or disagree with me or do what I want. I use a habit because it's something that I think I should be doing all the time. And once you practice a habit, it becomes a routine. It becomes part of what you do without thinking.
And making or breaking a personal routine, I think, is very much about motivation. So you better want to, better matter to you. And then I don't think it's necessarily rocket science. I think it's about, do you create the right triggers and reminders and tracking systems for yourself to pay attention to something long enough to become something that you do consistently.
Ultimately, leadership does come down to a certain amount of discipline. There's no magic.
Having a routine is about making a commitment to learning and growing at the end of the day.
You do a routine because it's who you want to be. You do a routine because it's the choice that you make about how you want to engage the world, how you want other people to see you, but more importantly, how you want your everyday effects to be consistent. And so you do a routine and practice it all the time until it becomes a habit. We want people to use admired leader behaviors in a routine-like format where they basically try them every day, everywhere. And as a result, they become skillful at them. As a result, they become authentic to those individuals. And most importantly, because they're baked into the style now of that individual, the effects that they will have will be more consistent and more enduring.
So the things about behaviors and routines is it's a constant demonstration about your capacity to change and to grow.
I think the difference between a technique and a routine is the difference between most of us and an admired leader. Because most of us, when we learn new things, we try to do them sort of sometimes. But admired leaders seem to be able to have the discipline to create routine. And so it's that routine, that constant everyday repetition of behavior that makes people feel like you're being genuine. Because if you come to me one day and you're giving me feedback and you start asking questions when you've never asked me questions before, and you usually just launch into a diatribe over your criticism, I will wonder why you're doing it. I will think you're leading me. Whereas if this is just something I know you do, it becomes much more effective. And that's the power of routine.
You learn behavior. You have to understand how it works and why it's important to you, because if it's not important to you, you won't do it. Then you have to find a way to prompt yourself so that you're practicing it. So whether that's a Post-it note next to your mirror or whether it's something you ask yourself at the end of the day before bed, whether you've done it, you need to find consistency. You'll find times when it was difficult for you, note why. You'll find times when you thought about doing that behavior and didn't, ask yourself why. But over time, you'll first get better at recognizing the moments where it's appropriate to do it. Then you'll notice that you're getting better at actually doing it. And then eventually you'll stop noticing that you're doing it because you won't think about it at all. It'll be automatic.
If you look at any organization or system that needs to be high reliability, where excellence really matters. And it's one thing to say, look, I really want our finance department to be excellent, or I really want our football team to be excellent. Of course we do. But most people don't have a life on their lines in that situation. If you look at the deck of an aircraft carrier, having absolute excellence there really matters. If you look in a surgical suite, having excellence there really matters. If you look inside an airline cockpit, excellence there really matters. And in every single one of those environments, everything they do is routine-based. There is nothing that is not a routine. They all run off checklists. They all do things exactly the same way every single time. That's how they repeat excellence. I think if you have the idea that you're going to repeat excellence without routines, what you're really hoping for is excellence through good fortune and accidental, accidental circumstance. Excellence not only is based in routines, excellence requires routines. And all you have to do is look at any system that runs with excellence and you will see that its routines are highly prescribed and highly regular.
So if you're somebody that is looking for new techniques, we don't want to teach you or show you admired leader behaviors because we don't want you to use them that way. What we want you to do is decide who you want to be. And when you hear one of our behaviors, we want you to say, is that who I want to be? Is that the person I need to be? Is that somebody that would be more effective if I were to do that every day? And then make it a routine and practice it all the time.
We believe in taking one behavior and using it like a habit. The notion of for the next 6 to 8 weeks, can you really work on this behavior? And importantly, if they don't apply it everywhere in their life, it never will be who they are, and it will be perceived as a technique. So we say try it with your kids, try it with your friends, try it with your family, try it at work, try it everywhere in your life. The goal really is we want these behaviors to become who you are, but the only way to do that is apply it everywhere.
Beyond the Admired Leadership Program, this is just a good way of looking at life. Hacks and shortcuts usually come up short. Go deeper. Look for the path that really requires something from you. Make it part of your character, part of who you are.